So we want to chat a bit more about data, and as was just introduced, data is often one of the biggest challenges or solutions that we're looking to really solve in order to really bring attribution modeling into the mainstream. So we've been introduced to a ton of challenges on data, a ton of challenges on attribution modeling. We want to spend the next half hour really to describe what can we do, how do we really close the gap and really solve some of the challenges that data provides, and also make attribution modeling more mainstream and stronger in the current markets. So Srishti, what do you think is the biggest challenge today in attribution modeling? And what is your perspective on that?
Yeah. So I think that scale and speed are really the two biggest challenges right now. If we consider, the fundamentals of attribution modeling aren't that hard. The reason it becomes really hard is because the data sets are not synchronized and they don't talk to each other, whether it's data across multiple types of exposure, whether that's purchase data, whether that's intent or brand data. So the ability to collect and harmonize this data at scale and do it fast, I believe, is really important.
So Sean, do you have a similar opinion? Is it scale and speed?
Yeah, I think that's a big component. So I think when you look at data and attribution, you really have to kind of zoom in. We talked about media mix modeling, which is sort of a high-level exercise, but then you got to zoom in to the right channel or to the channel that you're talking about, because every channel has its own sort of challenges. You've got digital, which historically has been the easiest to model from an attribution perspective, certainly has its own challenges. And then you have television, which is another big area. We happen to focus on television, so I can talk probably most intelligently about television. But there's three components in attribution for television that's been a challenge. The first of all is the source data. So your actual media data. I think it was Teresa earlier from Verizon that said how slow TV data is. I think she said 180 days, and that's not uncommon. So there's been a real challenge in the speed and granularity and accuracy of TV data, especially now that TV is changing so much. But that's only, just having that data doesn't get you there, right? You got to have that data. You got to have first-party data that's easily accessible and connectable with that data. You got to be able to connect those two data sets quickly and accurately. And then thirdly, and just as importantly, you got to have the analytics layer and the UI layer. Somebody mentioned that earlier, maybe it was Sean from Unilever. You got to have the analytics layer to make sense of it all. Because if you don't have that, why are you wasting all your time with getting the data sources?
So we have these three layers of, in order to really inform an attribution model and the quality of the data and the integration of that data. James, is there anything else that you think of that is really keeping back attribution modeling from becoming mainstream within and really taking off?
Yeah, I think one of the things we hear from agencies and publishers and brands is the competitive variable. People have got very good data on their own sales and their own spend, but what they don't have a good view on is what's my competitive set doing, and how can I access that in a way that's reliable, that's quick, that's at a good cadence, and that's got enough granularity, so I can establish some sort of competitive benchmark. Standard Media Index, we do a lot of work. We access data from 5 of the agency holding groups. We aggregate that. We've got $45 billion worth of national TV spend, and what we can do is start to look at those competitive variables and help both the publishers and the brands look at some sort of competitive benchmarking that gives attribution, it puts attribution in better context.
And so TV sounds like a large challenge, but I know it goes far beyond TV. Daniel, are there any other kind of key opportunities or key challenges that you see there keeping attribution modeling from taking off?
Yeah, I think the measurement in TV, but also in broadcast radio, is notoriously hard to do. And overall, in attribution, it obviously what the other said, matching the data is always a big challenge. But it really depends also on the objective. So in some, for some methodologies, you can utilize a single data set. For some other methodologies, you can merge different data sets. It really depends on what you try to accomplish, and what the metrics are of the attribution. BeatGrid Media, we leverage, we provide real-time audience metrics by leveraging the smartphone, implementing our own passive meter, and we gauge effectiveness by asking those same respondents that we know media exposure of, what their opinions of those campaigns, of those brands. So in that case, it's more goes towards the media effectiveness side. We need a little bit smaller sample size, but I guess it all comes to robustness and data quality. That's the foundation of it all, and obviously technology is a key component to that part.
So we've heard kind of end to end that there needs to be, from the data collection, you must be able to integrate, confirm that data quality, and then really use it to actually drive that change. But I don't think it'd be a good service to everyone here to really just leave them with, here are more problems. So thinking about really if you were to leave everyone here with just one idea or one solution to take back to their organizations, what would that be to really help bring them and accelerate attribution modeling within their organizations? Sean, do you want to give an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's first understand what your largest channel is, and then start zooming into that channel and start getting more granular with that channel. So for example, if you're a heavy TV spender, there's been a lot of advancements in the capabilities and technology over the last year, 2 years, 3 years. So in particular, at iSpot, we measure every TV ad across 10 million TV devices. So what we've done is we've essentially brought digital-like measurement into the TV world, where every impression of a TV ad at the household level can be measured, whether it's linear or OTT or time-shifted. And now you have the IP address of that device. So now you can do your attribution model much like you do for digital, including multi-touch attribution. So what we provide is an analytics layer that brings in first-party data. So we have a tracking pixel and an SDK for apps, a tracking pixel for websites, and we can connect to other data sets as well. And we bring those data sets together in real time. There's no longer waiting of 2 or 3 weeks if you're lucky, more like 5 to 12 weeks for the data. And then we provide the conversion analytics at a very granular level where you can pick up not only on the live linear, but also on the time shifted, on the OTT. And you start, with television, what's really important is frequency, right? Because you're running campaigns out there. So you need to understand sort of how is your frequency driving customers down the funnel. And really the only way to do that is if you bring sort of digital-like attribution concepts into the TV world. So I guess that would be my biggest.
I have a slightly, I think, different point of view here because, I think we need to build for the future, right? So we have to build to where the industry is going. So it has to be, if someone's looking at building something today, it has to be cross-channel. It cannot be, one channel alone. I also think that when we think about data sources, we need to find data sources that we can link to a common spine. Because the data sources will keep changing and evolving, right? So tomorrow you might have a better source or a different source for TV data. So when marketers think about it, I think they shouldn't focus on point solutions. They should really say, I want something that's cross-channel. I want something that I can plug and play. So my technology layer needs to be really strong for that.
Can you give an example of what you mean by a common spine?
So it could be an onboarder like an Experian, Acxiom, LiveRamp. There are several others. But unless that is a task that a marketer wants to manage themselves, which in most cases is not scalable, they have to pick someone that they can work with for that.
And I think that's more realistic today at the media mix model. Once you start going down to the lower level, if you look at the digital attribution companies, none of them are very good at television, right? If you look at so it is a different device, but I agree with you in the sense that you got to connect all these devices together with a device ID and sort of use a device graph to bring it all together. But finding one provider that can go deep on your digital and on your TV, I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, there's a lot of people here that have got terrific attribution models, and I think one of the things that would improve all the work that everyone's doing is to have more granular, more timely, cost level data to feed into those models that is cross-platform, that's coming from the same source. and the same source ideally is coming from the booking systems of the people that are placing it, whether it's the brands or the agencies, and being able to provide that in a really timely manner that can be fed into these models. Not providing data that's 8, 10, 12 weeks old, but starting to get into a phase where we can inject that data on a weekly basis into those models is a place that we'll be at over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks, to be able to compare TV and digital in a very similar way and at that very granular basis. So I think some terrific models out there. People have got their own data, their own sales data, their own spend data, their own first-party data, but to be able to bring that competitive context in quickly is something we're hearing from a lot of people.
So when you're able to bring it in quickly and you're able to bring in and integrate all this data in a 1 week, 2 week basis, what impact have you seen on organizations or on different teams in being able to do that?
Well, I think Sean probably sees this better than anyone. Is people can move campaigns quickly, and they can make decisions about where they advertise and how much they advertise, and they can pin it down to ROAS or ROI on a much more timely basis if they've got data that can allow them to make near real-time decisions.
Yeah.
Have you seen similar challenges also in your work, Dan?
Yeah, well, what we've seen is that the industry needs to, at least in the countries that we've been active, that the industry is not always adapting fast enough to what they can do with real-time data. If there are new data sets available, for example, one of the clients was really surprised what they could do with the intel that we provided to them, but they're not equipped to leverage that. They made, for example, long-term commitments, buying media with certain TV outlets, and the data really showed them they could optimize their campaigns in different ways, but their commitments with the agencies or the broadcaster didn't enable that. So I think the industry on itself needs to adapt to all the new capabilities that we have, where attribution of broadcast media, for example, is going towards the speed of digital, like Sean said. So it's adapting as an industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I think for the first time they have, so through the work that iSpot does, as well as what Daniel and John mentioned, for the first time they have the tools to actually be able to do something with it. But very often we see, so when we work with clients, we provide weekly, for example, sales reports and the ability to optimize. But many a times the first reaction is, oh, this is great. I didn't know it was possible, but I'm not sure I'm set up to do much with it. So there is an evolution, and then some clients are doing just a great job, but the first thing was having that information and those tools, and I think they're going through that evolution.
That's right. If you don't have the data in real time, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. But if the data comes in faster, you say, oh, well, now I got to take action. So let's figure out how to do it.
So for an organization that has the data but can't take action, what have you seen as allowing an organization to take action more effectively on data and really drive changes in their campaigns and in their spending?
Well, you can make changes even on television very quickly. So I think it's not an accurate statement to say it. You can change, even if you buy in the upfront, you can change creative. You could change day parts. You can change a lot of things. I think one example that I can share publicly is a case study we recently did with Experian Consumer Services, where we measured all their TV, and we still do. We do this on an ongoing basis, not on a per campaign. And what they were trying to drive is they have a new credit monitoring service, and they're really trying to drive installs of their app. Right, so we were measuring the installs of their app. We took the IP address that got connected automatically to our TVs, the 10 million TVs that we're measuring, and we showed them about what ended up being about 0.5% conversion from a particular campaign, which is actually low. And one of the things that they realized is that the ad itself didn't actually tell consumers what the app actually did and how they can use it. So they changed their creative to actually show screenshots from the app. And that's actually the current campaign you can see on TV running. They changed it to show the actual app and what you can do with it. So the entire ad is full of screenshots from the app. They launched that, and the conversion rate went up to 1.3%. So now you can actually, if you don't have the data, you're flying blind, right? So it's really important to get the data as quickly as possible, because the quicker you have the data, the quicker you can respond. Even if you think that It's not possible. I can't change this. I'm committed to, Bravo for the next year. That you can definitely change creative, and you can change a lot about your media schedule.
Yeah, and I think we did a research survey in conjunction with IRI back for the June ARF conference, and with some help from Bill Harvey, who I think many of you know. What we looked at was 45 or 50 brands, and there'd been a lot of talk about CMOs moving too much money out of TV into digital, and we had a look at 50 brands or so and how their mix was changing and how their sales results were impacted. And what we were able to see in that June ARF conference is that some of the top brands, a couple of dozen of those brands, had moved money out of TV into digital, had subsequently moved money back from digital into TV, were spending 25% more on TV, and had increased their sales on average by 15%. So there's some pretty easy things to do there to look at media mix if you've got good data that's current and that's up to date, and that can be matched with highly reliable sales data from the likes of IRI. We're also working with JD Power, NPD, a couple of other organisations, and then when you can start to put that together with set-top box data, you can really make some really quick decisions. And we're also looking at some other IRI data and some research in conjunction with them at the moment. And what we're seeing is that optimal mix that the IRF pointed to some time ago of 78%, I think, on TV was really holding up. That those CPG brands that were growing share and growing sales the fastest over the last 18 months or so were spending somewhere between 75 and 78% on TV. And those CPG brands that were losing market share were spending on average 60% on TV. So if you can get that type of data in quickly, then you can react on it.
Yeah, and I think you don't have to be a very big advertiser to make use of the data that's available today. One of the examples that we had is that we measured a healthcare company that was targeted elderly people, and we noticed that their conversion rates were off, and the data showed that they're focused on the wrong channels. They're doing a lot of social videos, and even though that might be obvious, I guess the data confirms that shifting the spend towards a different outlet, towards more radio and towards more TV, increased their conversion by about 6% within 2 months. And so there, and that wasn't a big campaign. So you don't have to be a huge advertiser to leverage the faster and newer data sets.
So it sounds like across the board, investing in data that's coming in quicker, but also ensuring that you have the controls for the quality, and also combining it with first-party data in order to then link it to actually make that change is really one of the key things that we need to be investing in order to make these changes. I want to open it up to a few questions. So if there's anyone who has any questions on ensuring data quality or really collecting the right data, does anyone have any questions?
So if we were to advance the idea of global data standards and standardized approach and taxonomies and things like that, how would we start that? Who would take the lead on that?
Well, you're Standard Media Index, right?
Yeah, thanks. Well, look, that's a great question, and to a large extent, we've started that process. We're working with the major holding groups in 19 countries around the world, and we've established a media tree as a first step against that, and then looking at categories. You look at different standards, different industries, different codes on a global basis. So look, it's a tricky one, but I think there's no doubt that the brands and the major holding groups are trying to come up with some sort of standardisation, because they would love to be comparing their data on a like-by-like basis on countries around the world, and I think you'll see a lot of progress around that in the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the standardization. That's kind of a loaded question, right? There's standardization and how we match, how we identify users and match devices, and there's a lot of companies, a lot of great companies that have made a lot of advancements in providing unified IDs. I think you mentioned LiveRamp, certainly one, and several others. And then there's standardization and reporting of the data. And I think there's been some standards that in terms of taxonomy and classification of brands and products. I think that's something that's been around for a long time. So there are some standards out there. But in terms of, I don't know if you're asking if there should be if the particular governing body should take that by the horns. I guess I don't. I think we'll let the market direct that. Sort of the brands, the advertisers are the ones with the dollars, and more than likely they'll be at the driver's wheel on a lot of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the advertisers at the end of the day, they have many and varied objectives from their campaigns, and standardization just in of itself to me feels like it's not going to work in the long run, right? It's each and every marketer will want to look at things differently because they're driving to different business outcomes, to their own purchases, to their households, to their shoppers. And so when they drive that process, I think that is where we make the most progress. So there is standardization around the tools and the technologies that can facilitate that. But I just don't see one particular organization doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's challenging, and even in digital, they've been trying that standardization of the metrics coming in, and it's still a big challenge. And I think it will take time. Like I said, the industry needs to evolve towards dealing with the data for example, where it's been slow, where it's been challenging around TV and radio, now being able to get faster data. I think it will take time.
And I think the one standardization that is important that we've seen a lot of brands trying to drive forward, and they're already doing this today, is how you measure a TV screen versus a digital screen versus a mobile screen, and especially when it comes to video, right? Because there's been a lot of confusion about, well, what's a video view on digital and what's a video view on TV? How do you equate those? And there's a lot of work right now being done by a lot of players in the space, and that's why we look at television much like in a digital-like manner. When we see a video or an ad, a commercial play on TV, to us, that's a video view that takes up the whole screen in most cases, and it's played from 0 to 30 seconds if it's a 30-second ad. And there's a lot of work being done on the digital side by several players on the digital side that are basically doing the same thing. They're creating a standardized score. Well, how much of the video was played? Is the audio even on? And what percentage of the screen was it on? And I think and a lot of our brand clients actually already use this today. They take their digital video views and the view rate. In the future, I think they'll take some other metrics as well. And then they take the television views and the view rates there. That's part of the data set that we provide them with. And they can now put them on equal footing. So I think in terms of measuring media, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in sort of standardization so you can look across all these channels. But all these channels are so different. Like measuring a digital device is so different than measuring a mobile device, than measuring a television device. And that's why you're not going to find one company that's good at all three of those things, because it's a completely different beast, completely.
And that is why I know I'm biased in this, but the business metrics, ultimately the sales, the revenue, ultimately that is the common denominator and the common metric, right? Because the media metrics will continue to change, but at the end of the day, we want to sell more product, and so that's...
Yeah, but even there, clients want, well, is this good? Is this bad? What are sort of the benchmarks there? So you always sort of have to look at it outside of just the particular content.
So on that, I think we'll end. I know for me, I learned one great item, which was on the need for really investing in that faster data, but also then balancing it with the quality of data. And I think to all of you, I ask you to take back, what is that one thing that you learned in really investing in data? Because nothing else that you learned today or that you can take back today can be implemented if you don't have the quality data at the right time and in the right metrics. So thank you for your time, and thank you guys.